Hey everybody, it's me again, Marl Cross 316. Thank you everybody for tuning in today. And today's topic is about Jesus feeding the 5,000. Jesus feeding the 5,000. I'm getting back into reading the book of John. This is the book of John, chapter 6, summary. And you know, when I was thinking, we've been reading the book of John and I've been reading chapter by chapter, but each chapter, this chapter right here is like 50-something verses, and it takes way too long to read, and plus it covers over a lot of material. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a bunch of videos in the course of time, and I'm going to discuss each topic that is in each chapter. So the first topic that arises is Jesus feeding the 5,000. And so this is verses 1 through 15. So 15 verses today. And let's just get a little summary of what's going on at this time. At this time, John the Baptist had been beheaded by King Herod. And also, Jesus had sent the 12 disciples to go and spread the good news of the gospel. Go spread the good news, tell people about Jesus, go heal in the name of Christ. And so, Jesus, he found out about John the Baptist getting beheaded, and so he kind of got sad about it. So he got in a boat and started wandering away in the waves. Started just going and going. And he was going to the Sea of Galilee, and at this time, the crowds, there's so many crowds to go and see Jesus. They wanted to see Jesus do all these miraculous signs, and because they knew he had healed the sick. So that's what's going on in verse 1. Jesus is going to the Sea of Galilee, and they know about his miraculous deeds. And then also, this story is recorded in the other three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They're both all in those Gospels, so you can check that out. But Jesus, he sees those crowds, and he has compassion on them. And it says in the book of Matthew that they're like a sheep without a shepherd. So he just started telling them all about all kinds of stuff, teaching them all kinds of good deeds and wisdom from Jesus. And the Jewish Passover, as you can read in verse 4 of chapter 6, that the Jewish Passover was very near. And you know, when the Jewish Passover comes, that is when it's time for Jesus to die, and to die on the cross for all our sins, and to rise 3 days later. So I'm going to start in verse 5. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, now the disciples had already come back, and they were telling Jesus, hey Jesus, I was healing in your name, and people actually got saved. People actually got healed from their weaknesses. And Jesus, he said, hey, good job, dude. And so he says to Philip, where shall we buy bread for these people to eat? They were already hungry. It's getting around maybe 8 o'clock at night, and they had been working very, very hard, and you know, they just wanted to rest. They wanted to go to a secret place and rest. And so verse 6 says, he asked this only to test him, for he had already had in mind what he was going to do. So Jesus already had in mind that he was going to feed these 5,000 people. There was 5,000 people around Jesus. Think about that. And so Philip answered him, 8 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. There's no way this little pieces of bread could feed 5,000 people. And so also we got Andrew, Peter, those two disciples come up, and they come up with this little boy. And they say, here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many? So this little boy, he was generous enough to give these 5 barley loaves of bread, but they could not feed 5,000 people. But watch here. In verse 10, Jesus said, have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, and the man And the men sat down, about 5,000 of them. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over, let nothing be wasted." So everybody got a fish and one got a piece of bread. Everybody got what they wanted just by this miraculous. This is just wonderful. Think about this. And so verse 13 says, "So they gathered them and filled 12." Yeah, I said it. 12 baskets with the pieces of 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. So there's 12 basketfuls of bread left over after everybody got their fill. Man, this is why Jesus could do anything when he was on the earth. He could come up with anything just like that because there was something unique about Jesus, because Jesus was God in the flesh. So verse 14, after the people saw the miraculous sign that Jesus did, they began to say, "Surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. And so that's what ends today's story, and a history story, because this actually happened in real life. And what I want you to think about is this. The moral of this story is that Jesus is the bread of life. Jesus can give you food. And this ain't no ordinary food. Jesus can give you spiritual food. Jesus is the cook, I would say, who gives you the bread that you need to eat on so that you can become a mature Christian, a mature child of God. And he can give this to any person, anybody on the earth. Anybody can get this spiritual food. So that's the moral of this story. He could feed 5,000 people with this spiritual food. He could feed 1,000,000 people with this spiritual food. So think about that. If you need God in your life, I pray that you would ask Him into your life and that you would turn your life to Jesus, believe in His name, and that you will have a new life with Him. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in today. Have a good week, and I'll see y'all next time.